All right, look at this. The satellite imagery is pretty impressive, right? Two hurricanes are set to deliver a 1-2 punch to the islands of Bermuda. Hurricane Humberto, now it is in its dying stages right now, but the winds are still elevated, 80-mile-per-hour winds, lashing the island chain with tropical storm force winds today. Then the growing Hurricane Imelda is set to deliver a potential direct hit to Bermuda by tomorrow afternoon and evening. That could be potentially fueled by a little bit of Humberto's leftover energy. It's confusing. When you look at that, it's a jumbled, chaotic mess. So to straighten it out for us, Fox Weather Hurricane Specialist Bryan Norcross joins us to break it all down. And Bryan, for the first half of the season, we've both been sitting there with the tropics with our feet up on the desk, drinking a soda. Now it's put to work time for you.
Yeah, well, it's an unusual situation to have hurricanes this close. As a matter of fact, I did a calculation on how close they are, and I came out with 479 miles from the center of Imelda to the center of Humberto. And that's about as close as you're ever going to get to hurricanes that are hurricanes. Sometimes you get a weaker storm that comes within the orbit of another system and sometimes actually gets absorbed, quite often gets absorbed. But to have two equal strength hurricanes that close together, that's super unusual and about as close as we have ever seen, as a matter of fact. So what we have right now is this one over here is Humberto, and you can see the flow coming into that like this is going right over Bermuda. There's kind of bands of outer bands of rain and gusty winds that they're going to get today as Humberto goes up that way. And then here comes Imelda, and this is more of a traditional looking hurricane with everything kind of much closer in. Humberto is unraveling, and that's going to be there tomorrow. So again, very unusual to have the same landmass have hurricanes 2 days in a row, like the beginning of the week and the end of the week I've seen before, but I don't think I've ever seen 2 days in a row. All right, so here we are with, first of all, Imelda. 80-mile-an-hour winds was the estimate at 11 o'clock. Hurricane hunters are out there right now, and we've seen observations that could justify, I think, going up to about 85. The air pressure was 980 at 11 o'clock. We'll see when they get done looking out there if they find anything less. It doesn't look very organized on the infrared satellite where we're looking at the tops of the clouds, but what you see is that the dark colors, see that bundle of dark colors, what happens to that? It goes right under the center. So those the tallest clouds and thunderstorms are now right around the center, and that's a sign of intensification, actually. Here's the cone on Imelda as it heads over toward Bermuda, and there you see, look, 100-mile-an-hour forecast there tomorrow evening, right in the vicinity of Bermuda. So what does that right in the vicinity mean? Let's look at the computer forecast models and zoom right in on Bermuda and see what they're saying. We've got a rogue model on here. This is the European, another one up there, the HMON, but the consensus is definitely right here where the cone is. And you see that most of the computer forecasts take it just to the north in some fashion of Bermuda. And remember that the circulation is like this. So the right side, this side, is the stronger side of the storm. So based on the information we have right now, the odds favor the stronger side of the storm impacting the island. Now, the worst of it is a donut, of course, and if that donut is going to hit this very small island, that's just being really unlucky. But still, it does look like they're going to get a significant hit tomorrow. Looking at the Google AI models, here the latest run that we have of them, and there you see it's right in the middle of the pack there of the possibilities. This over here is Humberto, which is going to kind of unravel, and all these lines up here are related to just depending on how unraveled that storm gets. There might be a weak component of it that comes down that way, but then there's no threat from that, and just kind of ignore that. What counts is these are the models right here that are related to Imelda. So definitely on high alert there for late in the day tomorrow from Imelda. Here's Humberto now. Here's the latest advisory. Also 80 miles per hour, about the same pressure, 979 millibars, but it's a very different looking storm. And there's the center way over here, more like a comma shape, and that's what happens as storms become non-tropical. They become looking more like commas. But you can kind of make out a line there. Look at that. What's happening here is flow coming out of Imelda is kind of pushing on Humberto and pushing dry air. You can see in between the two storms that we don't have much going on there. The air is dry, and that's getting pushed over top of Humberto, and so it's exposing part of it, but the winds are still quite strong, and it's a big circulation, so that's why even way out here they're getting pretty gusty winds. We don't have them right now because, look, they're in between lines. Here was a robust outer band right there, another one coming here. Right now, there's the island right there. They don't have any gusts, only winds of 21 miles per hour. It's coming in from the south like this. They had them up to 37 that I saw in this last band when that came through here maybe a couple hours ago now. All right, so let's take a look at the cone for this, and you see the idea is that the upper level winds will continue to be kind of hostile and it'll weaken, but once it gets out in here, they may actually turn into a very strong and large non-tropical storm, but of course there's no land that way for a long way, so that'll move up into the North Atlantic. But because it's so large, there will be impacts almost until the time that Imelda arrives tomorrow. It's kind of a crazy thing. All right, but the main effect on the U.S. is going to be in the ocean, and it's really significant here. Both these storms, remember the flow is coming like this, so both of them are putting energy back toward the East Coast, and this is a look at how high the waves are offshore. These are the kind of waves, if you're in a ship, that you go up and down. But look how high they are. Look at the pinks there. The pinks are way up in here in the 20-foot-ish range just offshore, and maybe near shore in the 12-foot range, and the crashing waves, a different kind of waves, but the crashing waves on the coast are probably up near a foot in some places here, right along the coast from about the Palm Beaches on up to the Delmarva right now. And as a matter of fact, in South Carolina, they have a coastal flood alert out because these waves do push farther up on the coast, and there's just energy pushing water. So this isn't big, but it's so low lying there. Some of those streets that flood in king tides and so forth, you may have flooding there. It would be saltwater flooding, terrible to drive your car through, by the way. But that's in South Carolina, really related to the low ground, not related to any special amount of energy coming exactly in that direction. Then we go through tonight and into tomorrow and tomorrow evening, and here we are with all of the East Coast all the way down to the Palm Beaches in Florida getting this direct energy from these two hurricanes, and it'll be quite dramatic. Huge waves, very dangerous rip currents, and just currents in general in the water. If you go just stand in the, they'll let the waves break and you just stand there maybe up to your knees, you'll feel the extra energy from these hurricanes in the water. And it's going to be hard to keep people off the beach, Bob, because the weather this weekend looks really quite spectacular over a good part of the East Coast, including down in Florida. So we hope people are going to stay safe, Bob.
Yeah, that's the thing. And we know the weather's going to be nice, high pressure building in. And Bryan, are these the only two players in the entire Atlantic? Are there other things that we're going to be watching, say, even next week?
Well, next week, there are hints that another system is going to come off Africa, one more. Normally, this time of the season, essentially October, is when that pretty much shuts off. So I think if another one does come off Africa worth watching, it looks like it wouldn't be until the end of next week that we'd have to really be thinking too hard about it. But it's probably the last one we'll see this year, except that this year has been pretty strange in a lot of ways. So maybe Africa will work for a little bit longer. But anyway, that's the only thing going on. There was this low pressure area in the Gulf that we were talking about yesterday, but it was never really tropical, and the weather pattern is really not going to allow anything to happen there. So we're not concerned with that. Of course, we always do watch the Gulf and the Caribbean this time of year.
Yeah, it is. It's been a strange one. Bryan Norcross, thanks so much for straightening it out, because I look at this satellite imagery and I'm like, what? It's tough to explain when you see these two things that are dancing with each other. Very good
unusual,
stuff.
yeah.
Yeah, very unusual. Thank you very much, Bryan Norcross, and we'll listen to you again later on this afternoon. Thank you, sir.